up on fairy tales, right? They're supposed to teach us lessons. Don't wander off. Don't trust strangers who live in candy houses. Know the drill.
Yeah.
But what happens to the kids who actually, survive that kind of messed up childhood trauma? Today, we're grabbing our steampunk crossbows and diving deep into the 2013 action fantasy movie that tried to answer that question in a very R-rated way. Hansel and Gretel, Witch Hunters.
That's right. And this isn't just, revisiting the old Grimm story. Our source for this deep dive is a specific and a pretty sharp film review by Jason Ayers. He definitely doesn't pull any punches. Our mission today is to really unpack his take on what happens when that childhood trauma turns into, well, an adult career killing witches, and maybe figure out why this movie, which had a big budget and stars, kind of ended up where it did.
Which the review places firmly in the bargain bin, right?
Spoilers, but yes, that's the ultimate verdict we're working toward.
Okay. And the core idea, the hook, is pretty immediate. The film doesn't really bother with the backstory, we all know.
No.
It jumps straight to what happens after the gingerbread house.
Right.
We see Hansel and Gretel all grown up, basically professional witch exterminators.
Exactly. The reviewer mentions this whole transition is covered super quick, like in an animated montage through the opening credit.
Ah, the opening credit montage. A classic shortcut.
Well, right, but apparently not a very whimsical one. The reviewer warns right away that this opening sequence is shockingly graphic and over the top.
Okay.
And that tone, that kind of intense, maybe excessive style, that pretty much sets the stage for the whole movie as they, fight witches and try to stop some big witchy apocalypse.
Let's dig into that tone then, because shockingly graphic and over the top feels intentional. And the review connects this style directly to who was footing the bill, doesn't it?
It absolutely does, yeah. It points out something pretty crucial. MTV was one of the production companies involved in financing it.
Ah, MTV Films. Okay.
And the review is pretty blunt about it. It says, quote, "It really shows this is an MTV movie through and through."
Wow. Okay. An MTV movie. That phrase carries some weight, especially for people who remember the network's heyday. It suggests a certain vibe, right?
Right.
Quick cuts, loud, maybe style over substance.
That's exactly the implication. High energy, lots of visual flair, maybe not too concerned with deep thoughts.
So how did that apparent MTV influence play out in the actual film, according to the review, like in the story and the pacing?
Well, the review links that visual style directly to the plot structure, or lack thereof. It describes the plot itself as linear and predictable. Basically something that requires no real attention span.
So easy viewing, maybe?
Easy viewing, but also suggesting not very engaging on a mental level. The critique implies the writing wasn't there to tell a complex story. It was just about setting up the next graphic use of gore and violence.
Right, so the script is just connective tissue between the action set pieces. But hang on, is that entirely fair? I mean, lots of action movies are pretty linear. Are they just criticizing it for being an action movie?
That's a fair point. But I think the reviewer's criticism goes a bit deeper than just, it's predictable. It seems to be about the lack of ambition to be anything more than that. The suggestion is it's aimed squarely at a generation perhaps used to visual gratification over mental satisfaction. It's less about the structure itself and more about the perceived, intellectual emptiness. It's made to be consumed and forgotten.
Okay. Cinematic fast food. Got it. Looks flashy, fills a hole, but doesn't stick with you.
Pretty much. Though the review does concede that it's not just for teenagers. It says even folks the wrong side of 30 could get some enjoyment out of it.
But with a big asterisk, right?
Huge one. The condition is you can enjoy it, provided you don't expect to have anything to talk about afterwards.
Okay. Fair enough. It's pure spectacle, not a conversation starter.
Exactly. It's visceral. It's about the experience of watching, inventive ways witches get taken down, not about pondering the themes.
That focus on inventive weaponry and visuals kind of leads us to where the film maybe did score some points, though. If the writing was thin, where did the director, Tommy Wirkola, actually spend the money?
Right, because it wasn't a cheap movie. And the review definitely acknowledges where the budget went. It wasn't on the script polish, apparently, but on the spectacle. The technical aspects get some praise. The review says the effects are genuinely good. And the action, while maybe nothing truly original, is still entertaining.
Okay, good effects, entertaining action. That's something. But the review highlighted something specific about the design, didn't it?
Yeah.
This sort of steampunk vibe.
Yes. That's called out as being particularly interesting, the tech, as the review puts it.
Steampunk in a dark fairy tale world.
Yeah.
How did that manifest? What did that actually look like?
Well, think less magic wands, more. Engineered solutions. Heavy-duty, sort of anachronistic gear. Crank-operated machine guns, maybe, elaborate crossbows, lots of leather and brass in the armor. It's that blend of, like, quasi-Victorian mechanics fighting against supernatural magic. The review implies this design choice, the look and feel of the gear, was actually one of the most creative parts of the film.
That makes sense. Good production design can really elevate things. You remember the cool gear long after you forget the plot point.
Totally.
So if the effects were good, the action was entertaining, and the steampunk tech was interesting, why the harsh overall verdict? Why still call it a bad piece of cinema that wasn't worth a movie ticket? Isn't cool world building sometimes enough?
It's a balance thing, isn't it? The reviewer basically argues that those technical plus points were kind of islands in a sea of mediocrity. They were the only strong points, but they couldn't save the whole ship. The core problem, according to the review, was this huge imbalance. Great visuals fighting against really poor performances and that thin script we talked about, if it's only visual as well.
Yeah, you might as well just watch the trailer on repeat.
Yeah.
Or, like the review said, maybe an MTV music video.
Exactly. And this leads to those very specific comparisons the reviewer uses to kind of rank the film's level of badness, which are pretty memorable.
Oh, right. It wasn't just bad, it was
sucker punch bad, which, is a pretty strong statement.
Yeah.
That film also went all in on visuals, but got hammered critically for its story.
A very ambitious failure, sucker punch. Okay.
And this is important context. The review makes a point of saying it is not bludgeoning bad.
Ah, the Uwe Boll benchmark of cinematic disaster. Okay, so not that bad. What does avoiding the blood drain zone actually mean for a film like this?
It means it clears a very, very low bar of basic competence, essentially. Blood drain is like shorthand for something utterly broken, poorly made, maybe even unintentionally hilarious in its failure.
Right.
So by saying Hansel and Gretel isn't that, the review is admitting it's, professionally shot, the effects work on a technical level, it's a disappointment, maybe even a bad film, but not a complete train wreck.
Gotcha. It functions as a movie, just not a particularly good one.
Precisely. Hence the final recommendation. Catch it at home. From the bargain bin. Don't pay full price.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've covered the visuals, the action, the plot. Let's pivot to that other major area dragging it down, the acting. The review is pretty savage here, wasn't it?
Savage is a good word for it.
Yeah.
The overall assessment of the acting was simply awful. Just flat out awful. Pretty much. And beyond the main stars, the rest of the cast gets dismissed as being on a bog standard ham and cheese fest.
Ouch. Ham and cheese fest. That paints a picture. Like, over the top, probably not very convincing performances.
Exactly. Melodramatic, scenery chewing, maybe. The reviewer didn't even feel the need to name and shame further, which also tells you something.
But the leads, the big names, Jeremy Renner and Famke Janssen, they got special attention, didn't they?
Oh, yes. They received, and I quote, top marks for awfulness.
Top marks. That's quite something.
And the critique feels particularly pointed because of who they are. The review includes this little aside. I hope they didn't get paid stupid money for this.
Implying the effort didn't match the likely paycheck. That it felt phoned in.
That seems to be the implication, yeah. Like, for that kind of money, you expect more.
Yeah.
Especially from someone like Renner.
Right, because Renner, at that time, was riding high. He had the critical acclaim from The Hurt Locker. How did the reviewers square that Oscar nomination level talent with this supposed awfulness?
The review actually tackles that directly. It acknowledges the critical acclaim for Hurt Locker, but then points out that his roles in the big blockbusters that followed The Avengers, Bourne Legacy, MI4 were, in the reviewer's opinion, decidedly average.
Okay, so a potential pattern of coasting in big movies.
Perhaps. And Witch Hunters, in this view, wasn't just average, it was a step down from average. It was actively bad.
What specifically made it bad, though? Was it just reading bad lines badly, or were there specific acting choices that didn't land?
The review calls out his attempts at humor, specifically. It says, I think he was trying to be funny. He didn't succeed.
Whoa, that's rough. Failed comedy is often more painful than failed drama.
Totally. So it suggests it wasn't just the material, but maybe a misjudged tone or delivery from Renner himself, maybe trying too hard to inject charm where it didn't fit, or maybe, like you said, just struggling with weak dialogue. Could also point back to the director maybe not focusing on performance.
Yeah, it's that classic problem, bad script forces bad choices, actor gets blamed. It's tough.
Okay, but amidst all this alleged awfulness and ham, was there anyone the reviewer thought did a decent job?
Yes, thankfully. There were a couple of exceptions mentioned. Gemma Arterton, who played Gretel, gets a simple but positive note. Watchable as ever.
Okay, so she was solid. doing her job professionally amongst the chaos.
Seems like it, but the real standout, the one who got genuine praise,
Who was that?
that was Pila Vitala, who played a character named Mina. She was highlighted as basically the only person really trying to perform.
And putting in the effort. Yeah, like bringing some actual dramatic intention to it. The review says she clearly shines amongst a subpar cast. She gave the performance that maybe the bigger names didn't bother to deliver.
Interesting. It shows that even in a film getting critically slammed, individual effort can still stand out.
Definitely. A little glimpse of maybe what could have been.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this all up. We've gone through the whole Ayers review, the graphic style, the MTV connection, the cool steampunk tech, the predictable plot, and this very uneven acting landscape. What's the main takeaway here?
I think the core takeaway is about that contradiction we discussed. You've got a film with like really strong aesthetic elements, the look, the effects, that interesting steampunk design were all apparently well executed. It delivered on the promise of a violent, action-packed fairy tale sequel in that sense.
Yeah.
But that technical skill was completely undermined by fundamental weaknesses elsewhere. The predictable, low-effort plot, questionable directing choices, and particularly the poor performances from the leads just dragged it down. It aimed for visual gratification and hit it, but sacrificed pretty much everything else.
Which lands it squarely in that bargain bin category, according to the review.
Right. Fun, maybe, if you have zero expectations, but ultimately forgettable and flawed.
And that brings us back to that idea of production influence, like MTV's potential role. It really makes you think, doesn't it? How much does that behind-the-scenes stuff shape the final film we see? For you, the listener, maybe the question is about value. When does cool design, like awesome steampunk gadgets and slick action, become enough to make a film worthwhile, even if the story is weak and the acting is, well, a ham and cheese fest?
Yeah, is visual flair enough?
Exactly. Does a movie like this need totally original action? Or is just nailing the look and the concept, the world building, enough to justify that cheap rental or bargain bin purchase? Next time you see something like Hansel and Gretel, witch hunters sitting there, think about it, is the style worth the price of admission, even if the substance isn't quite there?